We're going to do some series of reading and continuing on in the basic instincts. And the reason being is that I want to emphasize something very strongly and intimately. With what we are studying, listening, and learning today, we're people that we're getting the greatest benefit of this program. Keep in mind that the first 100 started this program, worked this program, got a desired results, and on their shoulders of the experience and the results that they got, we're getting a greater in-depth understanding of what this is all about today. It is almost virtually impossible to be on the face of the earth for any period of time and not learn something. Something. But the key thing is, what are we learning? And I talked about this the other night, and that is this. We get learning experiences and we get lessons from making mistakes or intentionally doing wrong and then having to pay consequences for those acts. But the greatest benefit that we get is when we suffer injustice. When we suffer for something that we didn't do. There's a great benefit from that. Now, it's kind of hard to sell it to a person who's selfish. Because they don't see the benefit in self-sacrifice and suffering. Because the spiritual essence of that is that this reward from the Spirit endures us to go through suffering and injustice and come out on the other side without bitterness or hate. So the point is that these instincts that we have, when we remain victim to them, and that's what we are, we come into this room as victims. But this process removes us from the victim role and moves us into a survival role. Victor's going to read something in the 12 and 12, and I'll be stopping intermittently, making a few points about it, and then we're going to move into step 4, because it is very keen that we understand what it is that we're supposed to inventory and how we're supposed to inventory in step 4. Because the things that come out of our effort to live on self is resentments, fears, and guilt, remorse through harm done to others. And when we understand this, we will understand something about the human plight, and also not only the human plight, but most importantly, is how we should live life, how to live life above all of these problems that we see happening around the world. Would you read, please, Victor?
From page 50 of the 12 and 12 on
Thank
step
you.
4. By now the newcomer has probably arrived at the following conclusions: that his character defects, representing instincts gone astray, have been the primary cause of his drinking and his failure at life. That unless he is now willing to work hard at the elimination of the worst of these defects, both sobriety and peace of mind will still elude him.
Now, I emphasize very strongly, there's no way that a person is going to work against themselves at these defects, which have been produced by self, by just attending meetings. No way possible. Keep reading.
That all the faulty foundation of his life will have to be torn out and built anew on bedrock. Now willing to commence the search for his own defects, he will ask, just how do I go about this? How do I take inventory of myself? Since step 4 is but the beginning of a lifetime practice, it can be suggested that he first have a look at those personal flaws which are acutely troublesome and fairly obvious. Using his best judgment of of what has been right and what has been wrong, he may make a rough survey of his conduct with respect to his primary instincts for sex, security, and society.
See, there we are. The security instincts, the social instincts, and the social instincts. All of us have those desires. And all of us have ambitions, plans right now to utilize one or all of those instincts when we leave here today. And the thing is, how do you go by doing that without it posing you a problem or imposing your will or your thinking on someone else? Now keep in mind that this fellow that wrote this, I think is some of the greatest writing. There's a lot of books been written on human behavior and the human, but Bill Wilson was a very prolific writer, and he wrote this after he'd been sober for some time to explain, to get into a deeper insight of what he had wrote in 1939 when he went into what we should inventory. Keep reading, Victor.
Looking back over his life, he can readily get underway by consideration of questions such as these. When, how, and just in what instances did my selfish pursuit of the sex relation damage other people and me? What people were hurt and how badly? Did I spoil my marriage and injure my children? Did I jeopardize my standing in the community? Just how did I react to these situations at the time? Did I burn with a guilt that nothing could extinguish, or did I insist that I was the pursued and not the pursuer, and thus above myself? How have I reacted to frustration in sexual matters? When denied, did I become vengeful or depressed? Did I take it out on other people? If there was rejection or coldness at home, did I use this as a reason for promiscuity? Also of importance for most alcoholics are the questions they must ask about their behavior respecting financial and emotional security.
You see, most people don't want to get into things like this, but yet they want to be sober. There's no way that a person can achieve the level of sobriety that this book offers unless we're willing and persistent in delving into the intimate details of our lives so we can reconstruct and build a life of emotional and spiritual security. You know, most people just want to stop drinking, and that's okay. But what we're talking about is achieving a level of emotional and spiritual freedom that most people in the world, and we see it through all the manifestations of all the tragic things in the world, is far out of reach. And here we are, just by the mere fact that we're alcoholics and we have our finger on the key to better living than most people. But yet, some of us just want to quit drinking. Keep reading, Victor.
So we're speaking of financial and emotional security. In these areas, fear, greed, possessiveness, and pride have too often done their worst. Surveying his business or employment record, almost any alcoholic can ask questions like these. In addition to my drinking problem, what character defects contributed to my financial instability? Did fear and inferiority about my fitness or my job destroy my confidence and fill me with conflict? Did I try to cover up those feelings of inadequacy by bluffing, cheating, lying, or evading responsibility, or by gripping that others failed to recognize my truly exceptional abilities? Did I overvalue myself and play the big shot? Did I have such unprincipled ambition that I double-crossed and undercut my associates? Was I extravagant? Did I recklessly borrow money, caring little whether it was repaid or not? Was I a pinch penny, refusing to support my family properly? Did I cut corners financially? What about the quick money deals, the stock market, and the races? Now, skipping down a couple paragraphs, we move to page 52. The most common symptom of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression.
See, Read that again, Victor.
The most common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. These stem from causes which sometimes seem to be within us.
Where?
Within us.
No, it's the other fellow's fault.
They seem to be within us,
Keep reading.
and at other times come from without.
See? In other times, that means that you make me mad. You're the cause of all my problems. You see, when are we going to quit living this topsy-turvy way? When are we going to grow up? I mean, my God, some of us got gray hair on our head. And we still want to live the life of the emotional, warped, or dependent children. This is a process by which gives us a grip on life by coming, you see, it's a spiritual thing. By coming dependent upon a higher power, we can gain independence from the physical and material things that we're slaves to. Keep reading, Victor.
To take inventory in this respect, we ought to consider carefully all personal relationships which bring continuous or recurring trouble. It should be remembered that this kind of insecurity may arise in any area where instincts are threatened. Questioning directed to this end might run like this, looking at both past and present.
Now look at this.
What sex situations have caused me anxiety, bitterness, frustration, or depression? Appraising each situation fairly, can I see where I've been at fault? Did these perplexities beset me because of selfishness or unreasonable demands? Or, if my disturbance was seemingly caused by the behavior of others, why do I lack the ability to accept conditions I cannot change?
Now read that part again. Because there's a key word, seemingly. Read that again.
Or, if my disturbance was seemingly caused by the behavior of others,
You made me mad. You made me do this. It's your fault. Keep reading.
why do I lack the ability to accept conditions I cannot change? These are the sort of fundamental inquiries that can disclose the source of my discomfort and indicate whether I may be able to alter my own conduct and so adjust myself serenely to self-discipline.
Now, when we look at these instincts are so powerful. And our job is to work against the instincts. It's to reduce self. Remember, step 3 says, made a decision to turn our thinking and our actions, which is our will in our lives, over to, the original version says, care and direction of a God of our own understanding. It is almost virtually impossible for a person to see the spiritual benefit of self-sacrifice. Because what we have to do is allow to be willing of this power to be able to fulfill and satisfy all, not some, all of our desires and our needs. What we need. You see, I made a statement earlier, and that is, right now, all of us are sitting here, and until I make this statement, most people are not aware that this power is performing what you need right now at this second. He's making your heart beat at approximately 80 beats a second. Yours is 89. Hers is 90. He knows precisely how much and what you need right now at this second, unbeknownst to you. He's providing what you need at this second. But our focus is on material things. And what we need at this second is the breath of life, to be able to breathe. Now, if you don't believe that, let that breath of life interrupt you. And right now, everything that you're thinking about will go out the window, and you'll be focused on trying to breathe. That's much of the awareness that we're trying to get you to see, is that there's no way you're going to separate yourself from this power. You see, this psychological thing that we have here is so fettered with resentments and fear and guilt and remorse through harm done to others. It blocks us off from the reality of life. And we live a mere existence bound down to the material and the physical ills of life. And step 4 is an effort to remove those things so we can live a better life, so we can become aware. It says being awakening to the Spirit, which all of us have. You know, I'm going to say it this way. Most people think that we are physical beings looking for a spiritual experience. But to the contrary, all of us are spiritual beings going through a spiritual experience. A physical experience. Because, see, at some point in time, when you come into this world and you take on the breath of life, that is a spirit coming into this conglomeration of flesh and bones. And if that flesh and bone thing doesn't take on the breath of life, then they call that a stillborn. But once you take on the breath of life, and another thing is you become acutely aware of your surroundings through your senses, then you begin to become somebody. But you're already a spiritual being that is growing up through a physical experience. And it's how you associate your connection from the spiritual part in you through the peripheral and the physical and the material world is how we live our life. So when we look at this, the basic instincts, the security instincts, all of us have a desire for material security. Money, shelter, food, clothing. But the point is that how much do we need? That is hard to make a fair assessment of how much money that we need. All of us have the desire for emotional security. As a matter of fact, the big thing in the world today, if you want to raise money and you want to get people's attention, the only thing that you have to do is mention the word terrorist. That just wreaks havoc with a person's emotions. That'll cause more attention. Only thing, when you go into the airport, just mention something. They even got a sign that said, don't play that. Don't even play with that. Because we get all out of kilt. You know. And I'm saying that my security is based on more than that. The program that we live says we can go anywhere in the world, the most sordid spots, and be safe and protected. And that's what I believe. And I hope sometimes I act according to what I believe, as opposed to in contrary to that. So these instincts that we have, when we live them on self, we develop. See, these are wrongs. And when we talk about resentments and get into this inventory, this is one that really, really, really throws a lot of people for a loop. First of all, a lot of people say they don't have resentments. Well, let's make an attempt to explain what a resentment is. Re means again. Resentment comes from a Latin word, sentire, which means to feel. And a resentment is to feel again. You know, I purposely made this comment so I could confirm this point. See, as we go through life, breathing and pumping blood, the game of life is likened into a full contact sport, whether it be rugby or whether it be American football. And that is, the rules of the game is, if you're on the field of play, then the rules of the game is full contact sport. That means you're going to get hit. Well, the rules of the game of life is if you're breathing and pumping blood, that means that at some point in your life that you're going to get hit with some injustice. There's no way around it. The only way you get away with that is if you die. Well, then you're not in the game of life. So when someone hits you with injustice, that's a wrong. That's one time. The question is how do we deal with that? Let me help you with a little bit. I'm going to reveal this a little bit earlier. Keep a rule of thumb. Here's a rule of thumb. Any time that you are accosted or any time that you are interfered with or any time you come across a person that does you wrong, that's a sick person. Normal, healthy people don't intentionally harm people. If they do and they found out they've harmed you in some way, they'll say, I'm sorry, I apologize, how can I straighten it up? But a sick person will harm you, walk all over you, have no second thought of you and what he's done. They'll wrong you. Now here's the other part of that. If we can't recognize that that's a sick person, guess what? We sick too. We're all self-absorbed. They have not done me like that. Well, why not? That's what sick people do, is hurt people. So when a person wrongs you, how do you react to it? Do you recognize that they're sick, or do you replay it? Let me tell you what they did to me. That's how we react to it. And we replay this over and over and over again because we're refilling it. And each time we do that, it makes ourselves a little bit innocent and that person a little bit more evil. And somebody said, well, what did you do? Well, I didn't do nothing. And that's how we replay resentments. You see, a resentment is like a replay machine. And it happens so fast till we can't see the truth about it. So we have to replay it again. The old announcer, he'll say, well, let's look at that again. So we take this replay machine and we replay it. And guess what? This time it's slowed down frame by frame. Every detail. And it didn't happen but one time, but it looks worse. Case in point, World Trade Towers. We didn't have but two. It didn't happen but once. But my God, they flew those planes into that World Trade Tower so many times. Let's watch it again. Each time they did it, it caused and promoted anger, resentment, disdain over and over and over again. Oh, but that wasn't the bad part. The worst part of it is when they slowed it down and you could see the people jumping out the windows. And then it looked worse. And they replaying this injury over and over and over and over and over again. Now, one might ask yourself, how many times you going to replay your injury? And who's doing it to you? They did it one time. They did it first. But look at all these many times we're doing it to ourselves. Now, you tell me if that makes good nonsense. But see, a resentment is a position where we trap ourselves. And we blame other people. And we talk about these things over and over and over again. Let me tell you another thing, how stupid resentments are. We have resentment against dead people. I can sit here and talk about Brian over and over and over again, and when Brian walks in the room, somebody says, "Is that him?" Because I've given you a preconceived and a prejudicial view of Brian just by talking about a person. Now, I'm saying this for a reason, because when we separate divorce relationships, how do we pass these resentments along to our children? Let me tell you what they did to me. Another thing about resentment. You see, resentment is likened unto us taking poison and wishing the other person die. It's a trap for the person who uses the resentments. Bill says they're futile and also they're completely and totally useless. You know, a person that you resent, you can go out and set their motor on fire, or set their house on fire, or you can even pummel them upside the head. But you know what? Does nothing for the resentment. You still got it. So retaliation does not and will not work. Here's another thing. The person that we resent can walk in the room right now from 30 years ago and our countenance will change. Don't have to say a word. Just walk in and you see him, and immediately there you are and gave your life over to that person. Whoop, just like that. But yet we think we're in control of our lives. You see, the person or the thing that we resent, and the person, the things that we fear, and the person or the guilt and remorse that we're holding on to from past incidents, that's what controls our life. And when we can see that, who wouldn't want to have some type of psychological freedom from that? Looks kind of stupid when we give our life over to incidents and circumstances in the past. So this is a profound way of, Bill says, walking into the sunlight of the Spirit and freedom. Once we see what resentments, how we're using resentments and what they're doing to us, then we can move toward trying to put them in their proper context, and they won't be a detriment to us. I refuse to give my life over to some sick person today. And when I do, guess what? Immediately, I get discomfort. You see, this is a process by which we can use by walking around on a daily basis and correcting the problem right there on the spot. So when we look at the bottom of page 63, let's read that. The last sentence on the bottom of page 63. We left off talking about, now Bill is giving us a more succinct, direct, intimate understanding of what it is that we must turn over in step 3. Now he's going to talk about the decision that we make that's not permanent. Read that, Victor.
Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning.
Now, wait a minute. We about getting ready to go into 4. Have we got to go into meetings yet? Haven't got there, right? Why did that get into our fellowship? Meeting makers make it. 90 meetings in 90 days. You know. That's not in this book. It says next we launched out on a course of what? Vigorous action. Which
many of us had never attempted.
That's right. Just went to meetings.
Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us.
Mm-hmm.
Our liquor was but a symptom.
There it is again.
So we had to get down to causes and conditions.
Anytime a person lives on a life based on self, we got to have something to medicate the ills that come out from living that. Remember, we started off from this emotional barometer from an early age, learning how to medicate these emotional problems through either alcohol or other means. And because of this condition of the body, now I'm making this simple, because of this condition of the body, either from the beginning of the onset or either we developed it, then we got in the habit of medicating these emotional problems with becoming addicted to another substance. In other words, when we had problems, the medication became a temporary solution. Then our bodies changed or either already had that, and then the temporary solution became a problem. So we had problems, then we had a temporary solution, then we got a habit of doing that, and then our problems began to create problems, and then our life had become unmanageable. That's it in simplicity. Now, because of these emotional displacements, problems, and deformities that we had, I can remember vividly before I took my first drink. I can remember what type of person that I was. I had low self-esteem, had a lot of anger, had a lot of self-pity. And that was as a result of me growing up poor and me looking at other children, not having certain things and resenting the position of life that I was in, wondering why I couldn't have like other children. Although I was highly academically strong. I made perfect grades in school until I got to middle school when I really started drinking. But see, my high academic skills and my athletic abilities did not suffice for my low self-esteem and my self-pity. But when I start medicating myself and I start feeling okay being a part of, not knowing that my body had a resistance to the very medication that I was using, it became a habit. Whenever I got in a social function, because of my low self-esteem, asking for a dance, drink a beer, whoop, there it was. I was okay. I could withstand the rejection of walking all the way across the room, being turned down and having to walk back just for a dance. I mean, does this sound anything like human nature? So these little problems that we had, we begin to medicate them. But at the same time, they begin to work for a little while, but at the same time, our body has developed this phenomenon of craving through years of drinking, using, and then just completely relying upon the medication to solve all of our problems. And then therefore our life has become unmanageable. And it has nothing to do with intellect. Let me tell you about intellect. Any intellect that we had, when we become in the grips of this vicious cycle, our intellect became non-existent in the normal fashion or form that is supposed to be used. In other words, when we were under the grips of an obsession, the intellect would be hijacked, taken captive, and the only way we could use it and how we was going to get another drink. We couldn't use it to solve other problems the way we used to. We would sit up and scheme and con, and two things when we woke up. How am I going to get another drink and what I'm going to have to do to get it? That's why I'm thinking. And you know what? We were some pretty creative people in how we went about to fulfill that too. You know, it wasn't about helping little old ladies across the street or trying to find a cure for cancer. It wasn't used that way. It was using cunning, baffling, lying, scheming, manipulating other people. And that's what kept us captive, because we thought that just because we were intelligent, but this disease will captivate your intellect. That's why we use the term, you can't be too dumb to get this. But we sure as hell could be too smart. So the point is this. When we're talking about these basic instincts of life, and we're talking about the decision that we have to make, this is why we have to do it. Keep reading, Victor.
This next part, you can refer to page 3 on your handout as well. It'll follow along with that. Therefore, we started on a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke.
Now listen how Bill says this. He's a prolific writer, excuse me, Victor.
That's all right.
First time he says business. And then he's going to come back and say commercial, which means the same thing. But he uses analogies, similitudes, allegories to paint a picture, to get you to see something that he's trying to convey. And that's what good teachers and good writers use to sort of paint you a picture. So he's going to compare the business inventory to a personal inventory. Keep reading.
Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade.
Mm-hmm.
One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods.
Now, fact-finding, fact-facing, truth about the stock in trade. And if any of you all ever had a business, it is imperative that you be able to look at the truth. One of the things which makes Walmart or Asda the most successful retail business in the world is because they have a proprietary inventory system that was prepared for them by IBM specifically. They were one of the first businesses. And by the way, Walmart has the second largest computer system in the world. The largest being the Defense Department or the Pentagon. That's the one that controls all of our nukes. But they got the second largest computer system in the world. And their computer system not only does a very factual, everyday inventory on the second, on the spot, what it does is they're connected to a weather satellite and they predict the weather. And the reason they predict the weather is because when they see an area where it's going to be a typhoon, and like down in New Orleans and Katrina, they pre-ship products to that area so they don't run out. That's why people was looting the Walmarts. They had all the products. They're way ahead of the game. Now another part is this. When you walk in one of their stores and you just swipe some Orbit gum across their computer, it automatically registers sale, and it automatically, before you walk out of the store, has computed and caused them to replace that item in inventory. And that's why at nighttime they're restocking the stores. Now here's the other kicker. They tell you that prices are falling every day. That inventory system is looking at the truth about what's in that store. In other words, the public thinks that they're offering sales every day, but what they're really literally doing is the things that are not selling or moving, they're reducing the price and getting that out of the store so they can put in what's selling. They don't care whether they like it or not. That's why when you go back to Asda, something that you like is not there, that means that the majority of people wasn't buying it. And you might like it a lot, but it's not there anymore. And they've dropped the price and got it out because they do not fool themselves about value. They're in the business of making money. And if it's not selling, they don't want it. I don't care how good the product. Some products are very good, but for some reason they don't sell. And it could be just the worst tore down piece of trinket in the world. If it's selling, they're going to have it because it's selling. They're making money. So the point is that, listen to this. Go ahead, read, Victor.
One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. We did exactly the same thing with our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure.
Now, not the person that we resent, not the person who wronged us. You see, that's where we're still trapped in this victim role. Now you don't understand. This is how I was raised, and this is what was done to me. It says nothing about the perpetrator, nothing about who done what. It says the flaws in our makeup. Reread that again, Victor.
We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations.
Mm-hmm.
Resentment is the number one offender.
And we talked about that, how resentment is the number one offender, how it fails to keep a person from living in the sunlight of the Spirit. Keep reading, Victor.
It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease.
Now, wait a minute. I thought we were talking about a physical disease and a mental obsession. Now we're talking about spiritual diseases.
Right.
You see, this is why we can't recognize this. We can readily see when a person is physically inundated in something like cancer. We can readily have compassion for that person. We can see, especially when a child has H1N1 and he's laying in the bed and he's got all the breathing apparatus, and we just got so much compassion. Those are physical manifestations of a physical disease. But see, we are people that are inundated in spiritual illnesses. And the indicator of spiritual illness is resentment and fear and guilt, remorse through harm done to others. In other words, when you're in your meetings and you see someone and they full of resentments, that person is spiritually ill. When you see someone and they're with a lot of fear, that person is spiritually ill. And when you see someone and they're continuing to troll the meetings and hurting people through their sexual escapades, that person is spiritually ill. Those are manifestations of a spiritual illness. And we should have the same compassion for that person as we do the person that's laying in the hospital bed. You look around the room at your neighbor. We look relatively healthy, don't we? Physically. But how do you know? Now, I'm saying this for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, because guess what? When we get ready to choose a partner, we choose from the sickest lot. We're people trying to get well. And if a person is not trying to get a sponsor, work a program, they're still spiritually sick, even though we look pretty good. We may have on Polo, Prada. But you know what? Inside here, we're sick as all bad, George. And all you have to do is just sit and watch. You see, selfish people don't have consideration for other people. They will step over you. Now, here's another thing. These are some keys to remember. Impatient people are selfish people. What they want is their needs met first. They ain't got time for you. They want their needs met. They're going to walk all over you and break in line. To hell with you. You know, I'm important and I'm going to. And if you react to a person like that, you get sick with them. You just step back out of the way and let a sick person be sick. Let them be sick. Or you have to ask yourself, why is it that you want... Here's another rule of thumb. Two wise men will never argue. A wise man and a fool won't argue. Two fools will argue all day long. So if you find yourself in an argument with somebody, just click. All you got to do is say, hey, I don't want to play the fool. Let a fool be a fool. Only a fool will try to change your fool. You see, when we look at it like that, it looks stupid, don't it? Why do we have the need to try to correct someone, even though if we are right? You know, let a fool go on down the road. But the way that we look at this, and we put ourselves in conjunction with this, is that we begin to see the truth about spiritual illnesses. Now, I got a few looks. Let me confirm what I'm saying. Like I told you, I'm not an authority, but it's just a few things that have been shown to me. Let's turn our books. We're going to move forward, but we're going to come back to this. Let's turn our books to page 66. Bottom of page 66, the last two sentences. I want you to read that, Victor, and I want you to read that real slow.
This was our course.
Now, this is a course that we take with a fool.
We realized that people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick.
See? I told you that when you get wrong, that person is spiritually sick. Now watch what it says.
Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too.
In other words, at some point in time in our life, we were sick too. Now, when a person wrongs us, guess what we're saying? Psychologically, we're saying that you don't have the right to be sick. Well, all of us in the room at some point in time were sick, and somebody suffered our ignorance. And had tolerance and patience with us to help us. So why can't we suffer? Now, I'm telling you again about this suffering. Now I'm going to come back and emphasize the spiritual principle in why and how we suffer injustice. Because when you're accosted by a sick person, it's just your time for you to cross that person's path. And guess what? You don't have to do anything to a sick person. They're going to wrong you. But how do you respond to that? It says, they like ourselves were sick too. Keep reading, Victor.
We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend.
Mm-hmm.
When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man.
Now, if we can't say this is a sick man, guess what? You see, two sickies don't make a wellie. You got two sick people, you're going to have some sick interaction. But one has got to be well and say, this is a sick man. Read, Victor.
How can I be helpful to him?
Mm-hmm.
God save me from being angry.
Uh-huh.
Thy will be done.
Keep reading.
We avoid retaliation or argument.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't treat sick people that way.
You wouldn't treat the little boy in the bed that you saw had the N1N1 and H1N1 with the things in his mouth. You wouldn't walk up there and treat him that way. Well, why would you treat a spiritually sick person the same way? Keep reading.
If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful.
Now here's the kicker. Keep reading.
We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one.
Just the people we want to show compassion, or just the people we think deserve it. No, it says each and every one, even the sick ones too. And when we can't do that, guess what? We sick too. So there's no benefit in suffering something that you've done. You're supposed to suffer consequences because for every action there's a reaction. But when you suffer for something that you didn't do, there's a great benefit that comes out of that. Great benefit. And what that means is the benefit that comes out is that you're still in the sunlight of the Spirit. Because as we treat other people, that blocks us off. There's no way you can have a resentment against someone and say that you love something that you've never seen. What blocks you off from another person blocks you off from God. What blocks you off from God blocks you off from another person. And we're going to learn that when we go through this inventory. So hopefully that we've shared a little bit of different insight in how we go about to see how and why we use these resentments. Now the inventory is to reveal something that we couldn't see. It is to disclose damage and unsaleable good. It is to have a searching, let's go back to page 64, a searching and fearless, moral, and moral, we're not talking about immoral, we're talking about moral, truth, and correctness in how we see the truth. The truth about the stock and trade, and our stock and trade is ourselves. Listen. Our decision-making apparatus, this thing up here, is what carries us through the day. Throughout the day, we make approximately 5,000 decisions. And we can make decisions based on emotions, or we can make decisions based on rational thinking. We can make decisions based on feelings, or we can make decisions based on facts. That's our choice. And a decision is gathering the facts and choosing the course of action. We even use in our fellowship, in our service system, our service structure, and that is called making an informed decision. That is getting all the facts, letting everybody speak their piece, and then making a decision based on the facts, not by what you feel or what you think. Because, see, our thinking, especially me, my thinking can be just as wrong between here and the moon. That's how much space I need for correction. So that's why I need you all, to test my thinking. And somebody said, no, Larry, I don't know. Let's look at that a different way. And I got to be willing. So the point is that our decision making should be based on facts and should be based on rational thinking. It should not be based on feelings. Now let me put this in context, because a lot of people, we talk about feelings and emotions. Feelings. You know, they have feeling groups, you know. My sponsor used to tell me, Larry, save your feelings for your funeral. Sounds pretty crude, doesn't it? You see, our feelings, ladies and gentlemen, are nothing more than indicators. They're neither good nor they're bad. It depends upon how we react and how we address them. When you're driving your motor down the motorway and your indicator light pops on in your car, that can either be a good sign or a bad sign. It could be a good sign if you stop and pay attention to your car, not the other fellow's car. See, there's an indicator there's something wrong with your car. And if you stop and pay attention to that, you could save a severe problem. But if you ignore it, that indicator, and you drive on, it could cause great problems. Now, when you stop and look at the indicator, does that mean there's something wrong with her car? Or did she cause your car, the indicator light, to come on? Of course not. So the indicators are good or it can be bad. It depends upon how you address them, the approach that you take. And when we go through any type of emotional feelings, and I'm using both terms, there's something wrong with our thinking. Because we are producing the discomfort. Something wrong with my car. There ain't nothing wrong with yours. It's how I'm processing a situation or circumstances. You see, I can internalize it and say it doesn't supposed to happen to me. Or I can externalize it and say it's your fault. Or I can take a look at it and see where it's coming from, gathering the facts and looking at them and then choosing a course of action based on rational thinking. You see, we're in this life to play the role that this higher power determines for us to play. I stand here and tell you that 28 years ago, this was not my, you couldn't have told me that, first of all, that I would be sober. Second of all, you couldn't have told me that I would be across the world somewhere talking about something of ambivalence or being unselfish. You couldn't have told me that. I was completely and totally the opposite. You couldn't have told me. You see, my pursuit in life was get all you can and get it quick. And if you don't do it, somebody else will. Wasn't about helping anybody, but completely and totally transformation in regards to what I thought and what is today. As a matter of fact, just a little bit, just a wee bit. 27 years ago, I was facing over 103 years in the penitentiary. That was my thinking, where it got me. But this way of life eradicated all of that and brought me over here across the pond. Now, I couldn't have done something like that. The person said, oh, no, Larry. Yep. Yes, sir. Completely and totally. One more thing, just to tell you that I didn't choose this, this chose me. And the only reason it chose me is because I made a decision to do something different. And that was to give up self. You see, my problem was my thinking and my drinking. Now I've given up my drinking. What you gonna do about your thinking? You gonna hold on to that? Matter of fact, that's why we drink, because of our thinking. See, the thinking produces the obsessive, compulsive behavior. It causes us to be out of kilt, completely and totally in emotional turmoil. And we sit here on our hands in a meeting and saying, what the hell is any good about this? And we miss the whole thing. That's because we want to hold on to our thinking. Well, step 3 on gives us a way to be able to give up that, our will through our thinking. And when we change our thinking, our emotions and our feelings will change. It's as simple as that. So we look at this, page 64. Go ahead and read on through, Victor. These are the instructions that Bill is going to give us on how to fill out this inventory. And we see the example on page 65 and how we do that. Go ahead, Victor.
Starting back with the last paragraph on 64. Resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it still stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have not only been mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome,
Now, when the spiritual malady is overcome,
we straighten out mentally and physically.
when we make the decision to turn our thinking and our actions over to a power greater than us, guess what? We straighten out mentally and physically. We don't do the adverse. We don't get ourselves together and get a flat and get a car and get a relationship. Then it don't work that way. We remove the things that block us off from the spirit, and then all those other things will be added unto you. I've yet to see a person that's spiritually fit that don't have any of all those things. Keep reading, Victor.
In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry.
That's column 1. Now, Bill is showing us how to do this, and we go from top to bottom. We do not go across the page. It says we list people, principles, and institution with whom we were resentful. That's the first thing that we do. Now, the second thing is, keep reading, Victor.
We ask ourselves why we were angry.
That's the cause. He's going to repeat this twice.
In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem,
See, this is self. Now look. Here's a key thing. This has been in the book ever since 1939. What we're reading right here. 1939. He says, was it our what, Victor?
in most cases, it was found that our self-esteem,
See, that's social instinct.
our pocketbooks,
That's our security instinct.
our ambitions,
Now, those ambitions, remember I told you, they are our plans to use these instincts, and they're attached to each one of those. Keep reading.
our personal relationships,
Which is the social instinct again.
including sex,
And that's the sex instinct. Now listen at this. Was either what?
hurt or
Hurt. Wait a minute. Hurt. They can be hurt. What else?
threatened.
Threatened. Don't have to hurt it, just threaten. Either hurt or threaten, and then he's going to repeat it again. Keep reading, Victor.
So we were sore.
We were sore,
We were burned up.
burned up.
On our grudge list,
Column 1, so he says it a different way this time. He says on our grudge list, keep reading,
we set opposite each name our injuries.
the cause, our injury. See, there's he's repeating it again. Now listen to what he's going to say this time.
Was it our self-esteem,
Social instinct,
our security,
security instinct,
our ambitions,
all of them.
our personal or sex relations,
Social and sex instincts. Now watch this.
which had been interfered with?
So listen, They don't have to hurt you. They can threaten, interfere with your ambitions, or hurt you. And guess what? That's where the problem comes. You see, anytime anybody interfere with your plans to satisfy or go about to fulfill these instincts, you're going to be out of kilt. You're going to be tender. You're going to be real sensitive. And the reason you're sensitive is because they're your ambitions and your plans. But if you wear life like a loose garment and allow the higher power to fulfill and satisfy this, it makes no difference who they do, what they do, or who affects you. Won't just be waters off a duck's back. Now, this way of living can be achieved. And I dare say there's very few people in our fellowship that even fathom this way of living. Now we're talking about true peace and true serenity. Now we're talking about living a life where most people in the world say, oh man, you're crazy. I can't live like that. What about this? What am I going to do about this? There again, self takes over again. You see, you got the bird in the tree. Even though food is provided for them every day, but guess what? It's not put in the nest for them. They got to go out and get it. But it's provided. Now I want you to consider this. When it's time for that mother bird to kick that little bird out the nest and fly on their own, they have no reservations. They're going to kick them out because they know the same thing that's taking care of them going to take care of the the little bird. But we, with our intellect, we hold on to our young 30 and 40 and 50 years. Will not let them go. Instincts. Oh, I can't see. And really, when we look at it, it's not what's going to happen to them, it's how we're going to look and how the pain that they're going through is going to affect us. And we don't know, by trying to protect them from the pains of life, is that we're causing them great pain. But we smart, we human, we got intellect. We know what's best. You see, these instincts that we have, they're so powerful, and they got us blinded. And the reason they got us blinded is because each time we perform one of them, there's a reward that's attached to performing it. And that's why we use it. Because when we interact in the right social environment, we feel good. When we move into the right section or have that good car or that good job or whatever, we feel good temporarily. And when we meet that mate that we think, we feel good temporarily. But it's short-lived. And sometimes it feels so great that we go to cutting corners, cheating, lying, manipulating to get it back again real quick. We don't want to go through the process of doing this the right way. We want to lie, scheme, cheat, and manipulate. We read about that in the 12 and 12. And that's what causes us problems. You see, these instincts, the reward is attached so we would use them. Can you imagine performing the sex act for 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long you're physically able to perform that, and not getting the reward at the end? How long do you think you'd do that? That's a lot of work. That's exercise. And if you don't get a reward at the end, you're not going to do that too many times. So the point is that there's a reward that's attached to performing these, so you do it. But the thing is, there's a prescribed way to go through. And what we're going to do is we're going to inventory the way that we go about to satisfy these instincts. Because the way that we go about and satisfy it is we have to inventory these instincts. Now, when we get this, we've got column 1, column 2, column 3. Go to page 67, Victor, and read in the middle of the paragraph. And this is going to give us column 4. And we're going to take a break in about 4 minutes. We're going to take it at 3:15. Somebody make me aware now. 3:15 to 3:30. So this is column 4.
Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrong others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish,
Selfish,
dishonest,
dishonest,
self-seeking, and frightened?
and frightened. Now we go to page 69 and we get inconsiderate. So when we look at this, from this process, Bill has given us the directions and how we deal with this. Now the point is that an inventory is a written instrument. And if we are thorough about this and we put this on paper, a lot of the things, remember, we go from top to bottom. Resentment. Brown. Attention to my wife. Now, you can see the examples over there because you see there's a space between Brown, and that space is if you have more than one resentment against the same person. You write each resentment down. And that example is there. See, he got more than one resentment against Brown. We're just going to use one. His attention to my wife. Then the next person is, Who's the next person? Miss Jones, right?
Jones.
He's got 2 or 3 against Miss Jones. And the reason he's going from top to bottom is because if you can remember the resentment, guess what? You can remember the person. If you can remember the person, you sure can remember the cause. You see, each column presents this. And what we do is we list this and we start and we analyze from the outside to get to the inside. And the inside is the most important thing. And when we come back, we're going to look at how we're affected, what's affected, and better yet, our part in it and how it can be erected. Let's take a break. Come back at 3:30.